Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call our Governance and Priorities Committee for Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 to order. We have an agenda in front of us. Any changes, Mr. Coleman?
No changes from administration, Madam Chair.
Looking for someone to move as a presented. Councillor Balazar, thank you very much. All in favor? That's unanimous. On to our minutes of September 5th, 2023. Looking for someone to move those as being correct. Councillor Lewis, any errors, omissions, comments, questions, or debate? Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. On to 4A, and we have a presentation this morning. Welcome to Mary Ellen from the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance, who's going to be providing her annual update. It is very good to see you again, Mary Ellen, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Mayor Tablanco and all councillors. It is a pleasure to join you today and speak about the work of the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance. My name is Mary Ellen Shane, and I'm a Senior Watershed Planning Coordinator with the NSWA. Just before I go too far, I just wanted to give a bit of an acknowledgement that the North Saskatchewan Watershed it lies within the traditional territories of Treaty 6, as well as Treaty 8, as well as the Métis homeland. Generally, every year or so, the NSWA, we do seek to reconnect with municipalities across our watershed. And our goal with this presentation is to introduce the NSWA to those of you who don't know us, and then to also reconnect with those wonderful people who we do know. And our presentation is intended really to highlight a few of the projects that we currently have on the go. And in the interest of time, I'll keep a lot of these highlights quite short. And finally, the goal of today is really to briefly touch on the value of a partnership between the NSWA as well as the municipalities across our watershed. So the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance, we are an organization who works to improve the health of our watershed. We do this by bringing together organizations across our watershed who have some piece of the puzzle that makes up watershed management and water management. Together, our organizations and members who participate on it strive to achieve the Water for Life goals, which are safe and secure drinking water, a healthy aquatic ecosystem, and a reliable supply of water for a sustainable economy. The NSWA, we're a nonprofit charitable organization with a multi-sector board of directors. Our board spans municipalities, industries, nonprofits, academia, provincial government, federal government, and members at large. And we're strongly supported by municipalities of all sizes across our watershed. The NSWA, we carry out a lot of our work with partners across a very large area. The North Saskatchewan River itself, within the bounds of Alberta, it's 1,200 kilometers long. And the watershed size is about 57,000 square kilometers, so quite large. And the geography is really vastly different across from west to east. So beginning with the west, we have our headwaters region, Rocky Mountains, high elevation and forested foothills, and this is where 90% of our water flows come from that we're drinking from. In the central portion of our watershed, it flattens a little bit, and this is our most populated area. This is obviously the area that we're in right now. And it's dominated by urban populations and heavy industrial and agricultural use. And then on the east, as we move eastward, the watershed gets a lot drier and flatter, and it is primarily dominated by agricultural use. And across this watershed, we have 75 municipalities with populations ranging from 100 to more than 1 million. This watershed is also home to an incredible diversity of industry, business, and agriculture. And all this to say that a lot of different activities are happening across our watershed all at once. And all of these activities have some impact on water, whether directly or indirectly. The NSWA, we have some key responsibilities, as I mentioned earlier. The first being that we call ourselves a collaborative spark plug, by which I mean that we're often the organization that brings partners together to achieve projects to improve watershed health. We conduct watershed assessment projects to deliver report card like state of the health watersheds, much like you might see at a school. We place a great deal of focus on education and outreach activities that are intended to elevate water literacy among staff, councils, and residents. And finally, we work to build tools and technology that can support partners in their everyday work. And so I'm going to go through a few projects to really just highlight how we bring these responsibilities to life. So this slide here is just simply to visibly show you some of the projects that we have on the go, kind of all happening at the same time. I just want to draw your attention to the circle at the top, which is around our subwatershed alliances. And Leduc County has been a longstanding member of our Headwaters Alliance. And the subwatershed alliances are really important to us because they bring a more local perspective about local issues and potential solutions. And they've also been a spark plug for many of these projects that I'm about to mention. So the first one of the big projects that we have on the go right now is our State of the Watershed project. The State of the Watershed is one of our key responsibilities assigned to us as a watershed planning and advisory council under Water for Life. And this assessment is about objectively defining the current state of health, much like a report card at school, as I kind of mentioned. The last State of the Watershed was completed by the NSWA in 2005, which was almost 20 years ago. And so we're really happy to be launching an update of our State of the Watershed assessment. This time we're using a more standardized approach of reporting using a tool called the Freshwater Health Index, which has been used by a few watersheds across the world. And this new approach is standardized and will help us lead to a bit more consistency and comparability between reporting periods. One really different thing I like about this new approach is that there's a larger stakeholder involvement this time. So a big component of this project will be asking you about your perceptions of how watershed governance is actually working. The next that I'll talk about is our outreach. So the NSWA, we undertake quite a few different forms of outreach in the watershed, all aimed to raise the level of awareness and interest and understanding of stewardship and science. For example, we host workshops for special projects of interest. We host lunch and learn webinars. We call them our Watershed Wednesdays. The next one is actually tomorrow, and these are free for people to attend. And throughout the summer months, staff attend community events, many of which with municipalities across our watershed to show off different aspects of watershed science. And we also publish newsletters each month and highlight the work of our watershed and carry out a lot of the same messaging through our various social media platforms. So this is just a fun picture of some of the activities that we were up to this summer. Another project that we have on the go is the development of a strategy to improve wetland management across our watershed. This work actually came about as a direction from our State of the Watershed Alliances, and they suggested that we should develop a collaborative direction for wetland management that fits and supports the direction of the Alberta wetland policy, so that provincial policy. And the strategy speaks to a regional or watershed vision for wetlands and identifies some potential ways that we can work together to collectively enhance our wetland management. And as we do with everything, the wetland strategy is advisory in nature. Each partner decides what they do with that advice and to advance this on their own. It's simply a map about how we can all kind of move together in an intermunicipal way. Another project that we have on the goal that I wanted to highlight was our regional lake stewardship project. This is a new initiative that's really aimed at helping to elevate lakes and collaborative lake management. So one of the goals of this project was to develop a community of practice, which really offers a space for groups like you have a Wizard Lake Management Society here. So it's an opportunity for groups like that to meet with other groups like theirs to share resources and lessons learned. So this project involves creating new educational material and initiating some restoration demonstrations as well to show how shoreline restoration can be achieved. And another project highlight that I wanted to share was about the Riparian Health Action Plan. I've actually shared this one several times with council over the years. It's very close to my heart. It is one of our longest standing projects at the moment. It began with the development of a cost-effective satellite-based tool, which we used in order to map over 17,000 kilometers of shorelines across our watershed. And we're mapping the condition of those shorelines. And through the action plan, we developed a target. So the results of that assessment showed that only 45% of our shorelines are in good condition. So we set a target to say we want to get to 65%. And then we also built a riparian web portal that shares the data with the larger public, shares resources and success stories of actual restoration projects on the ground. So this is a tool that we built in collaboration with other watershed groups and is now being used Alberta-wide. And last summer, it actually won an Emerald Award. So the RAP project, Riparian Health Action Plan project, the work continues. Two key efforts are currently underway, both focused squarely on supporting municipalities in their planning and policy development. The first is a review of municipal bylaws. The review includes bylaws from 24 municipalities across our watershed, a sampling of municipalities across our watershed, and is meant to assess various aspects of statutory planning as it relates to riparian management. And from that baseline, we're actually developing a best management guide that will suggest some bylaw language that can be used by municipalities. And this might sound familiar for Leduc because a similar project had been done at Pigeon Lake. And so this kind of parallels it, but it spreads across our wider watershed. The second effort that's currently underway is focused on the need for some information about riparian setbacks. And so far this work has been building on the provincial guidelines for stepping back from the water and has been aimed at using tools in order to identify areas of high hazardous slopes, as well as areas that could be possibly inundated by flooding. And the last project that I wanted to highlight today is actually just in the proposal stage. So it's around, pardon me, it's in the proposal stage. It's around natural asset management. And so the term natural assets is one way of looking at watershed features like wetlands and riparian areas that I mentioned in terms of quantifying the values of the services they offer to communities. So this could look like carbon capture or flood abatement. And last month, the NSWA submitted an application to Environmental Damages Fund for a $1 million grant to embark on our first pilot project to evaluate those services. And we chose White Mud, Black Mud as our region of interest. So participation with the county as well as other municipalities within that watershed area will be really important for the success of this project. So finally, I just wanted to highlight the benefits of partnership. As I'm coming to the end of my presentation here. Each year we do ask municipalities for a contribution to support our own ongoing operations. And for 17 years, we have asked for a contribution of 50 cents per capita and kept our request at that level quite steady. So this year we did a review and discovered that inflation over that past 17 years has actually increased by 48%. And so we have adjusted our suggested contribution by 10 cents up to 60 cents per capita.
Makes math harder to do.
So in exchange for that donation, some of the benefits of this partnership, we facilitate collaborative partnerships and pursue projects of intermunicipal interest. We successfully acquire grants from local, provincial, and federal sources and use those funds in order to work locally. We've produced dozens of technical reports to fill in data gaps on the watershed. We offer expertise and advice on projects hosted by municipalities themselves and often sit on municipally led advisory committees. We provide an abundance of free education material and awareness material that's meant to elevate awareness with counselors, staff, as well as residents. And again, our next free webinar is actually tomorrow, and it's on a municipal topic. So we encourage you to attend. So yeah, thank you for having me here today to share with you the work of the NSWA. And I've noted a few ways that you can connect with us on the screen there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if we have time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Do you have a contribution from everyone within the watershed?
We do ask for a contribution from everyone in the watershed. On average, about 44 municipalities contribute every year. Yeah.
Councillor Blaser.
Yeah, I got a couple of quick questions. I belong to the Pigeon Lake Watershed Association Steering Committee. I was just wondering if you do any work with Pigeon Lake Watershed itself as far as restoration projects, and also I'm Leduc County's representative on Alice. Do you do any work with Alice? There's Alice through Brazeau and through Wetaskiwin and Leduc County. I was just wondering if you work with any of them.
Yes, I'll begin with the Alice work. They're an incredible deliverer of watershed services. They're doing they're delivering best management practices, delivering elevating awareness about how we can change our practices on the landscape in order to improve ecosystem services like pardon me, like filtering nutrients and those sort of things. We do work with them in a partnership kind of sense. So several of our staff sit on the Alice PACs from across our watershed, Brazeau County, Parkland County, as well as Vermilion County. So we do have members that sit on their PACs. I've given presentations to your PAC as well. And have often been in contact with your coordinator to provide data and that sort of thing. Yeah, so I see that as the primary exchange between that organization and ours, is a lot of data sharing and collaborative projects as well. And then with Pigeon Lake, I'd say indirectly associated with Pigeon Lake, we know them, and if they, so for example, their riparian intactness project followed the same methods that we developed for our pilot project area, which was amazing. Pigeon Lake is within the Battle River watershed, so I'd say that there's more associations there. I believe the coordinators from that overarching alliance sit on the Pigeon Lake group, and they actually share offices at this point. So it's more directed towards the Battle River Watershed Alliance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Verdi.
If developers are building near the banks, would you be able to dictate the setbacks, or would you work with the counties directly?
Oh, we have no authority to dictate anything. We would provide some guidance to the county about what they might want to consider within those setbacks. And so that is a big part of the riparian project that we have on the go right now. But we wouldn't get involved with any of those decisions at the county level. Yeah. There's some really great guidance that's offered through the Stepping Back from the Water, the provincial guidelines. That would be kind of a starting place for a development, like a specific development. I would probably start there. A lot of the work that we're doing, we're trying to assess this from like a really broad scale watershed perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
I have two questions, Mary Ellen, and both of them relate to the work that you do or don't do with the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board.
Okay.
The first one is one of the areas that the board is within their mandate has to do with stormwater management. And we all know that at some point, stormwater management ends up in our creeks and our rivers and then into the North Saskatchewan River. We're currently have sent a letter to the EMRB to look at, as it turns out, part of our black mud drainage area, because we're concerned that it, needs a clean out, maybe not in Leduc County, but into another municipality. Can you talk a little bit about how you help to coordinate work around things like stormwater management? And if you don't, what you would like to be able to do around that area with the EMRB?
Oh, that's a really great question. I can
It's like an interview question, I realize now. I'm sorry.
I can give you an example of a specific project around the White Mud, Black Mud Creek. Actually, in 2017, we helped to facilitate an intermunicipal collaborative project called the White Mud, Black Mud Creek Stormwater Management Plan, I believe. And it was directed at trying to figure out what our stormwater release rates were. And so the role that NSWA played there was an administrative one to provide a space for those municipalities to come together. I believe we might have also applied for the funds. I'm a little hazy on that. It wasn't my project at that time.
No, you probably would have, because the EMRB cannot, so it needs a host, somebody
Okay.
else to apply for it.
Yeah. And then we would have applied for the funds and then hired a consultant in order to help evaluate the area and do the science that's needed in order to help kind of come to the conclusion of that decision. And then out of that, they ended up with a fence line stormwater release rate across the municipalities that the province uses in order to kind of help manage their cumulative effects. So that was the role that we had played at that time. I know that EMRB is, they were more focused on other services, and now they're beginning to move more into the natural ecosystem services. So we would really like to see a lot more collaboration.
And I
with
will be
them.
pushing that collaboration at that table, just so you know, if you start getting more phone calls.
Oh, great.
probably I've done something.
Good.
The other question, and you probably can't answer it, and because I've asked, we had some modeling done about what it's going to look like when the region accepts another 1 million residents in 40 years. And my question was, do we have enough water?
Drinking water?
Yes. I mean, we're going to need water for 1 million people. We're going to need water for business. We're going to need water for industry. And it was like, nobody had modeled that. And I don't know if it's you guys or where it sits, but as we look at this supposed growth that's going to be happening in the region, we need to be mindful that we have what kind of one source for like 98% of our residents and businesses, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a very good point. I think we've been really lucky in the North Saskatchewan basin because the amount of water that we had supplied to us compared to the demand was really great. Like that ratio was, we didn't really have to think about it too much, but we are beginning to see growth plans that require a lot more water. So that includes municipal expansion, that includes industrial expansion, even new industries we haven't seen before, such as carbon and
Hydrogen and
and hydrogen production as well, which all use quite a bit of water. So the answer to that question is it hasn't been fully modeled yet at this point. And that is another project, might have been on the screen at one point. I didn't touch on it, but it's also in the development stage. It's also in the proposal stage. So we are fundraising for that project at the moment. And hopefully actually starting work with WaterSmart on that work in November, but it could get pushed to January, depending on the fundraising. So if that is a project that you'd like to be more involved with or potentially.
Well, and again,
fundraise
I
as well.
believe it's a project that the EMRB needs to be intimately involved with as they
Yes.
look at our growth plan. I mean, if our growth plan doesn't connect with the amount of water we have, then we have a more significant issue then. So I will be asking the same questions at the EMRB table. I've asked them a couple of times, but I'll continue to ask them because I think that work has to be done together.
Yes, I totally agree. And to be fair to them, they provided us a letter of support in several of our grant applications for that project. Yeah,
Thank you.
great questions. Thank you.
Any other really hard questions for me? I am seeing none. Thank you very much for coming out. I'll just say again, I really enjoyed my time on the Headwaters. I thought that your guys' committees always had clear outcomes. You worked hard, you worked the committees hard and the boards hard. So thank you for that, and keep up the good work. With that, I need someone to move for information. Councillor Verdi, thank you very much. All in favor? It is unanimous. Have a great day.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it makes no sense to plan for a million people. with water. 500,000. Yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, and we need so much water for industry as well. Yeah. Thanks again. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
Okay, Brad and Maureen. Whenever you guys are ready, we're going into 5A, Economic Development Update, September 2023.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Committee. I'd like to turn this presentation over to Maureen Easton, who is our Economic Development Officer.
Ms. Easton.
Morning. It's too loud. Madam Chair and committee members, I'm here to update Council on the economic development activities for the month of September. And I request that Council receives the following as information. So our team has had a pretty busy month. I'm just going to start with some of our recent activities in terms of attendance at the following events. The Edmonton International Airport's opening celebration of Buffalo Airways and their new 737. While Buffalo Air is headquartered in Yellowknife, the new cargo-fitted 737 will be based out of EIA and run cargo service 5 days a week between Edmonton and Yellowknife. This is going to allow triple the current cargo capacity to take goods and services up north. Montana's First Nations from Massachusetts held an opening ceremony and welcome at their new business headquarters, which is also at the Edmonton International Airport. And some of their economic activities will include construction and vertical farming. Some upcoming events, upcoming activities under business retention and expansion include some training for agritourism businesses to support experience development and itineraries to attract visitors to the region will be held in November. This training is leveraged by the Chamber of Commerce and Leduc County Economic Development from provincial funding through Travel Alberta. November 23rd at the Coast Nisku Inn, we will host a regional event titled the Career Connector Symposium. This is in response to business concerns over labor and staffing shortages, and economic development has taken the lead on this regional event, which has municipalities, chambers of commerce, government, and job placement organizations working collectively to bring employers and job seekers together. Administration has secured funds through the Alberta government under the Labor Market Partnership Grant, which is a division of Jobs, Economy, and Trade, to support this event. And it will include learning sessions for both job seekers and employers, followed by an employer showcase and job fair. The economic development newsletter is expected to go out within the next few days. We have increased the sign up on that is up to 382 businesses now that have signed up to receive information directly related to business in Leduc County. The peer mentorship cohort that we ran the pilot project on in the spring of last year, we held the first new meeting for this year. These events will run from September till June, and we host them at the Beck. MNP Group, which was Myers Norris Penny, but they've shortened it now. Financial Business Services is their what they do. They have joined our group and they've generously supported it with a sponsorship. And I just wanted to add, this one's not in our report, but for Small Business Week, which is the third week of October, we are offering any Leduc County business use of the BEC for free for any business related event. So we'll have the advertising going out for that shortly. Just a couple of the events that were hosted at the BEC in September. A workshop for the 5,000 vehicle challenge was held by Edmonton Global and the Edmonton International Airport to enhance the framework for this initiative. The 5,000 vehicle challenge initiative was started by the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub, and their goal is to have 5,000 hydrogen powered vehicles on the road in Western Canada within 5 years. The BEC also hosted the Edmonton Municipal Regional Board, the EMRB, Committee of the Whole for their meeting in September, and it was followed by a business tour for the elected officials of the region. And the chamber hosted a Smart Start workshop on social impact for local entrepreneurs just last week. We're continuing to look for and find ways to showcase the business center to prospective tenants, and we keep refining the usage to be able to fit the deliverables and outcomes for the center, for the activities within the center. Some of our team member activities for regional economic engagement in September included working with communications to develop an investor playbook and updated county community profile as part of our marketing and external awareness. An Edmonton Global event with 2 United States site selectors as a high-level introduction was to showcase the region and learn about what the US site selectors look for when they're determining investment opportunities. Another attended engagement was the Carbon Capture Canada Convention, was held in Edmonton to showcase carbon capture and underground storage innovation technology. There were a couple of Leduc County businesses that were set up there, Capital Power and Schlumberger being the large ones. The quarterly Edmonton Region Tourism meeting focused on how to assist tourism operators to become export ready. This Edmonton Region Tourism Group includes economic development officers that work on tourism from across the region. And Explore Edmonton held their Indigenous tourism strategy release for the region. This is the first Indigenous focused tourism strategy in Alberta. Leduc County staff will be working directly with Invest Alberta in October to ensure that their staff have a better awareness of our economic assets for when they're engaging with international investors. They'll be able to showcase our assets directly. And then just a couple of items from directly from our investment strategy. 2 strategic outcomes with September due dates are on track. The engagement and advocacy initiative activities are ongoing and align with council's visions, and we're collaborating with the intergovernmental group on this. And the targeting investment outcome has been completed with engaged partnerships. The team is focusing on emerging sectors and further engagement in all areas of economic growth. Our website, the business website, the investment mapping and strategies have been added to the business website with more enhancements in progress. The intent is to just keep adding the components as they're ready and available and as we progress. And our traffic to that new website was up again through August from 317 to 344 web visits. And that concludes my report.
Okay, Counselor Smith.
I was a little disappointed we didn't send somebody down to the Global Energy Show in Calgary. There was a lot of people there. I'm just looking at the Global Energy Show, June 11 to 13, 2024, North America's leading energy event. I know the Premier was there. There's a strategic conference. There's an exhibition with 600 exhibitors on 5 exhibition halls. I think next year, I would like to see, with FCM being in Calgary from June 6 to 9, it would be nice to see Leduc County maybe host a hospitality suite being in Alberta, and then continue on with the Global Energy Show and have a booth set up. We do have the second largest energy park, and I have a feel, it just feels like we take our energy industry for granted as we talk about value add and tourism and a lot of stuff. So I'm really going to be looking and pushing for us to have a much larger presence in 2024 at this show with, again, FCM is a great time to leverage what we're doing. We're doing great things, and we talk to our local partners, and you have regional, but I think we really need to step out in 2024. I had a chance to attend the energy show in Houston, and we had a booth set up, Leduc County booth. I worked that floor for about 4 days, and it was massive, but people, Edmonton has their ways of reaching out, but I'd really like to see Leduc County taking the floor, presenting the strengths that we have at that one. And so becoming an exhibitor would be extremely helpful, I believe, with a really great setup. Some of the setups are phenomenal, and there's just so many ideas, but it just gets us, Leduc County, Edmonton Global can do it. So again, I will be looking for some direction on that we're going. I'd like to do it and hit the floor as a counselor. I'd like to see our economic development on the floor, and I'd like to see a delegation of our innovative energy companies in Nisku being invited, bringing a delegation. And again, I know it costs money, but at FCM, when I was in Ottawa, I had a chance to attend a lot of Alberta energy hospitality suites where Eastern people can actually come in and realize that it gets cold and we need to use oil and gas, and we're not going anywhere. So again, proud of our oil and gas industry, but I think we need to make sure that their name appears as much as tourism, as much as logistics, as much as transportation. So again, let's see what we can do about it being a bigger presence there next year.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Yes, thank you. And to your comment, Councillor, we did have a representative, myself and Alan, GM. We went down to Calgary for the Global Energy Show. We basically just walked the floor, engaged with some of our, we did some research, found out which businesses are in the Nisku area and Leduc County, and made sure we visited with them, but also seeing what was happening in the area and what was happening in the region. But yeah, we have reached out to DGM at that time to make sure we are on their radar for when they are looking for booths and such like that. So we do take your comments there.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
And again, I knew we had a couple representatives, but I just think it's time to, as I say, do a hospitality suite at FCM, bringing the Eastern politicians into the reality of Alberta and our oil and gas industry, as well as the opportunity to have one of those booths on the floor and have the thousands of people that come through. I'm pretty proud of what we do here. And I think that would, again, with FCM leveraging right into that, would be a really solid week for Leduc County to just pull away a little bit from Edmonton Global and show our stuff specifically. So again, thank you for attending on it. I'd like to see some counselors out. I'd like to see, a little bit more people next year. Maybe that's a budget consideration that we need to discuss, because probably going to cost a little bit more than $1,000 to do those initiatives. Thanks.
So I'm wondering, Councillor Smith, after we move this for information, perhaps we do put a motion on the floor for a report to look at what would be the costs and the feedback, or maybe that's been heard by administration. Go ahead.
Yeah, so these are things we're looking at in the 2024 budget.
Already.
I mean,
Okay.
growing your ECDEV is a series of steps you take, and you don't go from 0 to 60. So
Okay.
we're looking at all those opportunities. And I think we talked to council when we did a bit of the strategic plan update a while back about if we want to move forward and we want
We
to
have to
be
do
one of the
this.
keys, then we have to invest some money. As Councillor Smith said, you do have to put some skin in the game to get those opportunities. So
So
these are all
we're-
things that are coming forward.
yeah,
in budget.
been heard, is being worked on. We'll look forward to it. Okay. Any other questions? Again, just a comment. I did send out an email to everyone. Thank you for the great work for the EMRB Committee of the Whole meeting. There were no glitches at all. The people who are on the tour to Wild and Pine, Alternate Routes Coffee, and then Annalita were extremely impressed. And the comment I heard was this really has bumped up the expectation for tours by municipalities. And so hopefully that once again, we're leading the way about what is, what it is that we can showcase, and other municipalities will follow along. So thank you for that. Councillor Balazar.
Yes, I'd also like to say a thank you. This is coming from the Pigeon Lake Watershed Association. They have rented the Beck on the 14th, which is a couple Saturdays from now. They were telling me you folks were very nice and very accommodating to work with. So I thank you for that. I'm doing my best to promote it. So
Good
thank
job.
you.
All right, looking for someone to move this for information. Councillor Lewis, thank you. Comments, questions, all in favor? Yeah, thank you very much. On to a 6A, which is Ms. Klamosko. Lori.
Thank you very much. So this morning I have a report to present to council on an update for our asset management program to the committee. So we have a formal asset management program was established by the county in September 2018 with the formation of a cross-departmental asset management committee. So since that time, the committee has worked to continue to develop, and we continuously strive to enhance the program. So attachment 1 in your agenda package provides an overview of some of the work that's been done to date. So I will just do a short review of this document just to bring to light, just because we haven't done an update for quite some time on the work that the committee's been doing for the last 5 years. So going into page 40 of your package, we have an asset management hierarchy of documents. So once we had an asset management policy approved by council in 2019, we continued to look at the next steps of some of the foundational documents needed to guide the work that we're doing for asset management. So within this figure in this report, it just shows the various documents that the Asset Management Committee has completed to date, the things that we're working on, and some things that we're still striving to, to complete in the future. So really, we have made significant progress with the development, like I said, of an asset management policy. We've created a governance framework and a strategy document. And within the strategy, we identified a lot of documents that we need to develop. So within asset management plans, how we're structuring asset management plans in the organization is we have one for each specific type of asset. So we have completed an asset management plan for fleet, which was included in the package. I'll speak to more detail shortly, but then we continue to do work on the various asset classes. So right now we are working on the bridge asset management plan. So in recent time, we did a condition assessment framework in 2021. We've completed a fleet management strategy. State of infrastructure report was completed late in 2022. So it is the basis of some information I'll provide as well this morning. So again, just providing that status update. Administrative directives, as we develop different documents, we are developing the administrative directives and the processes and guidelines that are needed to do the work administratively. So those, I think, will continuously be blue, because those are things that you're always going to be working on and developing further. Just the work that we've done on fleet alone, we learn from the processes we take, and then we amend and have an improvement plan to make it better, and we make changes to those documents. So again, just going to the next pages, it just provides a little bit more detail on those different pieces of work that were done. So I don't plan to go through this in its entirety, but if council has any questions specifically about any of the documents that we've developed to this point in time, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this overview document, if there's any.
Questions? And please just ask questions as they come up. That works. I think Ms. Klamosko likes that flow if we just kind of ask as they come up. So we're good. All right.
Okay. So then for this morning's presentation, I wanted to spend a little bit more time to speak about two documents that we've been working on as an asset management committee. And one of those being our asset management plan and our state of infrastructure report. So in 2022, we undertook a project with an external consultant. So what I might do is I'll speak to the state of infrastructure first, because ultimately information that's within the state of infrastructure feeds into an asset management plan. So the state of infrastructure report we undertook with an external consultant to help us create a state of infrastructure report for all of the asset classes in the organization to see where things were at and kind of where we're at in its entirety for all of our capital assets in the organization. So similar to what was talked about within the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance presentation and that report card concept, I just provided an excerpt from our state of infrastructure report, just because there's work we're still doing on that report from an asset management committee. But I wanted to demonstrate to council the pieces that we're doing in order to inform what we put in front of you for budget consideration. So we've done a lot of work on the fleet aspect. So this fleet and infrastructure report card just provides a quick snapshot of what our fleet assets, where they're at, and perhaps maybe what we need to look at to change maybe some of our practices, our investments, those kind of things. So here you'll see that the replacement cost in this report says that our fleet assets to replace them all today would be about 32 million. Their average asset conditions very good, and we have a low risk on this asset class. And then we provide some descriptions of the assets within this report card. And then it provides, again, a breakdown of the replacement value, a summary of asset condition. We have a graph that shows when assets were purchased, and then just some of the expected life versus what we're expecting versus what's being realized with asset life.
Go ahead.
Again, that's quite informative. I'm just wondering, are we, based on the information there, trading our vehicles in a little too early? And I know, again, as we look at budget, if we keep anything for a longer amount of time, we have to put more maintenance into it. So just based on the assumptions here, could we be keeping our vehicles several more years without realizing a lot more, I guess, mechanical work, more maintenance and repair?
So maybe I'll go through the asset management plan, and then it may answer a bit of your question, and then I could follow up specifically on that question. So the state of infrastructure, like I said, was completed for all asset classes. I'm focusing today on fleet just because we are more advanced, I would say, as an asset management committee on the fleet asset. So again, we have changed our practices and how we're putting together our budget recommendation for fleet replacement in 2024. So wanted to provide that background information. So going just into more detail on the asset management plan. So again, we just have an introduction that just speaks to our asset management policy and our commitment to, effective stewardship of our assets. And ultimately, assets provide services to our community. So we need to make sure that we have the assets we need in order to do our delivery of service. So again, similar information than what you saw on that external state of infrastructure report. So we have a current inventory of 124 assets. the value of the assets from that time when that report was written. These are things we look at every year. We've seen some pretty big changes in terms of costs for our assets in our fleet. So we have reflected the replacement value with what we're seeing for replacement costs right now. We've seen big escalations, primarily in our greater fleet in the heavy duty area. So again, we provide a figure on the age breakdown. So you can see how many units we have within this age category, what it would cost to replace, and that percentage of a replacement cost. Again, just tying assets to a level of service and that delivery of service. So we're trying to document what are these assets providing for the service delivery in our municipality. I do think as an organization, there's more work that we need to do to define this and to create documented levels of service for every asset class, but this is our first iteration. But again, it's an area of improvement that we're working on. So this is where I just wanted to speak in more detail into getting into this area of the asset management plan, because there's two primary factors that we look at when we're looking for assets to be replaced. So the first factor would be condition assessment. So what you see here is we're providing every fleet asset with a condition rating. So it can go from very good at a 1 to very poor, that's unfit for sustained services. So we are doing an annual inspection on all of our fleet assets, and we have a standardized approach that's used across the organization. And we are assessing the condition rating for every fleet asset. So we are assigning a value to every asset. So this is what we're following. So then you can see here, when you look at our physical condition of current fleet inventory, we actually have, it's 81% of our fleet assets are in very good or good condition. So that's a positive thing to see. So we just, again, have that pie chart to indicate what our condition assessment ratings are. So you can see here the number of units that are very good and good. You're starting to see we do have some conditions or some fleet vehicles in that very poor or poor condition. But when making a decision on an asset replacement, however, you can't just look at the condition of the asset as a standalone factor to make that decision. You really need to look at what that risk is that failure of that asset poses to service delivery. So what we've built into our asset management plans are a risk assessment. So this, really looks at, again, the service that asset provides helps us to deliver in the municipality. And if that fails, what's the risk to our organization because of that failure? So then we have the consequence of failure. So we've created a scorecard to say, if it's something that's going to have, impact on human safety and it's a loss of life as a consequence of that asset failing, then that deserves a different consideration than something that might just go into, let's say, an impact on performance where it provides a discomfort or a nuisance, might postpone a date where you were hoping to have this done by, the Wednesday, but it's going to be done the next Monday. There's a consequence of failure to various assets that we have. So we really wanted to consider that consequence when we're making determinations of what we should go forward on budget with council. So here, when evaluating the consequences of failure, it needs to be determined in the context of scoring that element. So impact on performance and schedule, impact on human safety, and impact on the asset. So then when we've gone through our entire fleet assets and we have assigned a risk assessment to it. So we have looked at every asset and placed it on this scorecard on if this particular fleet asset fails, what's the risk to service delivery and what's the consequence of that failure. So when you put those two factors together, so it's the likelihood of failure, which is condition, and the risk assessment, which is the impact of failure, we create a risk matrix. So you'll see that here, when you look at this figure 5, we look at the likelihood of failure and the consequence of failure. So really what we're looking at in terms of process and what we're putting forward in the 2024 budget for fleet replacement is we are going to look to replace the fleet assets that fall into the highest risk and high risk categories first. So if we have something that falls within the lowest and low risk, those are going to fall to the bottom of the list. But we are going to look to the highest and a high risk first, because those are the things that we should replace first, not only because of perhaps their condition, but because of more about the risk that it poses to the organization. So then when we look here to the next page within the asset management plan, we look at the risk assessment impact. So when you look, I'll just go to this table here. We have one unit that is at the highest risk of failure for the organization, and 2 at the high risk. So those are where we would start when we're starting to put our budget ask together. So what we're changing this year for budget presentation later this year is we're actually doing one project profile document for fleet replacement, so that we will put all of our fleet together and have one project profile document, and we will show you that, okay, we want to propose to replace this one unit that's at the highest risk, the high risk, the 2 units. And then once we get into the medium risk, we're looking at various factors. I mean, it comes down to also the dollar value that we can afford to do in fleet replacement. So we cannot look to replace all of $3.5 million worth of medium risk assets. So then we're looking at other criteria on what we should put forward for consideration. So we have a very well thought out process on what we're putting forward for budget consideration for 2024.
Go ahead.
Couple of questions. Then you got the highest risk machine, which I probably think is the brusher. Do you trade that machine at $610,000, or you just keep repairing it because it's a high repair article, if that's the one I'm thinking of?
I don't believe that isn't the brusher isn't that one unit. So I can't speak to that unit specifically, but ultimately when we are doing an assessment of condition, we look at if we are seeing significant component failure, what's the anticipated repairs that we're expecting in the next 12 months. That's part of our assessment of condition, is we look at those things as well.
Okay, now my second thought is to Councillor Smith's comments. Now, if you can have a machine that you buy new and you keep it on warranty, it's on warranty, is it maybe better to run that machine and we'll trade it while warranty's on, instead of working it and doing all the repairs, trading it at the end and getting lower value? So your dollar value on that machine is less when you trade it till it. Is it better to work them and always have warranty on them?
Well, I can say that right now with our, motor grader replacement would be the assets where we have purchased them with some warranty. They are well past warranty periods. So we aren't turning over our fleet assets in a way that they're just coming off warranty and we're replacing them. I would say we're not at that level of investment to be turning over our fleet inventory that quickly. And we're just using our assets longer than their expected life, well beyond what we would have anticipated at the start.
And to further that, so on our graders, are we still working on a 10,000 hour kind of thing and moving them on, or is that just a depending?
No, I would say that I don't have the information right in front of me on the grader fleet exactly, but our grader fleet hours are beyond that number when we're looking for replacement.
Okay, thanks.
So going into this state of infrastructure, so this is where We're categorizing the average condition, the current replacement costs of that 37 million. So we're saying that we should, over a 10-year period, be looking at an average investment of around that $3.7 million in fleet replacement every year. Figure 8 just shows us a historical spending on fleet assets. So over from 2016 to 2020, our average investment for fleet replacement was around that $2.2 million. So going into the financial summary, we're just demonstrating that 3.7 is what the current replacement value is demonstrating to us in terms of what we should be committing financially for fleet renewal. We're comparing that to our annual spending. We have right now a funding gap, we call it, that we're saying that if we continue to spend around that 2.1, we're actually, creating an issue down the road that we're not spending that 3.7. So we're underfunding our fleet replacement. So at this point in time, these are all the pieces that the Asset Management Committee is looking at in order to inform a next project or a next step where we do need to look at a financial strategy. We don't typically, we bring forward the asks of what we need for fleet, and you invest in a fleet replacement value, but there's our opportunities to look at how we budget differently. Perhaps when you don't have a budget ask of 3.7 million, you could put dollars into reserves. So there's certain things that we could be doing to smooth out asset replacement and perhaps putting money away. So we need to really look at that financial strategy, because as we look at state of infrastructure reports for all asset classes across the organization, there are some funding gaps that we need to look at as an organization to say, do we need to change our approach on how we're doing and funding replacement of fleet or for capital assets across the organization? So these are all the pieces that in the background administration is doing in order to ensure that we're making sound decisions and putting well thought out processes in how we make budget decisions and what we put in front of council. So this is some of the work that we're doing within the program.
Ms. Klamosko, a couple of questions. The first question is, what level of risk have we assigned to not being able to get the large equipment, or have we considered that? So we know that the graders, for instance, that we ordered in 2022 are just showing up at the end of 2023. Is that part of the risk factors that you've considered? And I'm assuming it's not going to get better.
So what we're doing, what we've talked about at our asset management committee meetings in terms of the long deliveries that we're seeing for some of these assets is that going into our 2024 budget, what I think we're going to propose to council is, here are the fleet assets that we want to recommend for budget approval in 2024. But then we also are going to bring potential, motion on the floor to say, these are the assets we're anticipating to ask for 2025. We would like to have a council motion to approve that expenditure, or have a motion for that commitment for that replacement, that we could be ordering assets sooner. So they don't require payment of these assets until delivery. So we have some opportunity to place orders sooner so that we get them when we need them, as opposed to having that delay.
Thank you for that. My second question, I'm glad you brought up budget, kind of relates to budget. As we see the price of things like, and I'm going to use graders, which we need for the 1,700 kilometers of gravel roads that we have, as we see those prices continue to get out of control, have we thought of another strategy for rebuilding or tooling or redoing something, even if we only look at one or two and look at that cost, because it's becoming out of reach. And it is something, as you said, that if they fail, it's a critical failure for our municipality. Mr. Coleman, your hand?
Yep, that you stole the thunder right out of my mouth here. So yes, that's something we're doing. We have tasked our director of road ops to bring us back a report looking at the difference between purchasing new and remanufactured equipment. So we think there might be an opportunity there. The frame, the structure of some of these heavy pieces of iron will last forever if taken care of. It's the mechanical moving parts that need to be replaced. And so the opportunity of purchasing cheaper product that is completely rebuilt is something we're considering.
And we are the home of innovation in a park in which there would be lots of companies that would be able to support us with that. I have Councillor Smith and then Councillor Scobie.
Again, your report did answer some of the questions I had about replacement, not necessarily on age, but again, on a scoring system, which I think is pretty appropriate. It's interesting that your funding gap is $1.5 million, which is, I guess, data backed. You've gone through and have done a good report. When you come to budget, is it possible? I see the need for us to increase our spending on our fleet, but I'm not sure you're going to get 1.5 million, like you had said in your report, what we can afford. So perhaps an expenditure of, yes, 1.5 seems to put us on track. What does $900,000 look like? And again, just throwing those numbers out. So an alternative is, this is our best case scenario. We're on track according to the report. However, if you were to put in X dollars, I'll just throw out the number 900,000 instead of the 1.5. What does that do to the risk going forward? And I'm wondering, as we leverage government grants to give us vehicles, either through hydrogen or electric, where maybe we could find $100,000 a year in innovation that other governments would give us money to have that electric vehicle in Parks and Rec that doesn't have to go out too far, or a hydrogen vehicle in partnership with the airport, where maybe we could cut into that deficit. So just some alternatives going into budget on best case scenario. What can we afford? In my opinion, I do believe on your report, we do need to increase our spending, but I'm not sure as you guys put the budget together, the 1.5 with all the other demands that we have with so much growth is a figure. But I would definitely support more money going into fleet. Just an estimate, $610,000. I'll take a guess. That's a fire truck.
That would be a grader, I believe.
Okay, so just some alternatives as we go forward. Your report definitely is very informative of where we are and what we need to do. But what can we afford was another comment that you had into the budget process. Thank you.
I have Councillor Scobie and then Councillor Lewis.
I guess just kind of more of a comment. My question's kind of gone, but this rebuilding, I've watched them do that up at the mine, and they've got equipment with up to like 100,000 hours. I think they've gone beyond what they probably should have gone with it, but us letting machines go with 12 and 14,000 hours, I think there's definitely room to have a rebuild on at least once. You don't want to get them too far to where you do start getting fatigue and stuff, but I think a strategy of maybe rebuilding a lot of these things once would be and I guess the dollar figure is going to dictate whether that's feasible or not, but I think it must be a good method to go because they are doing it. So be good to see what that works out like.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. Can you tell me is it one person that's doing the assessment on all the equipment, or is it each department? I guess for continuity on how a piece is assessed.
So we have an asset management committee that has representation from all departments in the organization. So through that committee, we've developed a standardized template that is followed by everybody to complete these condition assessments. For most of, I would say, the fleet assets, our mechanics are very involved in that process. So not the same mechanic does every asset. it's too onerous of an endeavor for one individual to do. So we've tried to build a lot of direction and detail into our process documents. So it guides some of that work so that we have better standardization. But, you know, it's not a perfect system where it's one individual that you have that consistency to that one perspective or that one individual. But we have endeavored to create those internal processes to eliminate some, you know, whether it's perceptions or biases through that process. And we do a review of the condition. You know, we have some review done by the directors and different processes to have some oversight over those to make sure, does this seem reasonable? Is it what we expected? So there's a little bit of that analysis that goes to look at those documents as well.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Scobie.
Okay, the question that I forgot. That you mentioned the purchasing getting approvals to purchase ahead for next year's assets. Would that get us into a position where we could lock these things in quicker to not all of a sudden have the $40,000 a grader and $50,000 a grader extra from when they request it to the time they can order it? Can that be worked in there to where, you know, when we decide we need that thing and set it in and they price it and lock it in? So, you know, because we've put in what, $150,000 or $80,000 the last two times just because of price increases. So if we can cover that, that's a big chunk of change.
Yes, we've come back to council with a number of purchases in the last couple of years with those cost escalations that we did not anticipate. So if we're able to order the units sooner, we would be locking in a price at that time. So then we would have more certainty moving forward.
Thank you.
So just in
There goes one of our assets, yes.
that's
Very
right.
expensive asset. Yes.
Yeah.
That was Dave, right?
Yeah. All right. So this presentation today, so that was just a brief overview of the work that the Asset Management Committee is doing to put, like I said, very thoughtful processes in place in order to inform budget asks. We're going to continue to expand the work that we've done within fleet into our other asset classes. So we'll continue to build this model out across the organization, just because, you know, what our state of infrastructure report has shown us is that, you know, the funding gap is not just strictly in the fleet assets. We do have funding gaps in other areas. So that information I'll be bringing forward from the Asset Management Committee to governance, to workshop for further discussion. And then ultimately we will need to look at our financial strategy in terms of do we want to recognize these funding gaps and provide opportunities for looking at doing things in a little bit of a different process in order to not create hardships in specific years where you might have a really high need for asset replacement. So if there's any other questions on asset management?
I don't have a question. I do have a comment. When I was elected 10 years ago, which seems like an awful long time, but 10 years ago, we had no way to look at how we prioritize our roads, and we had no way to look at how we prioritize large equipment purchases. Our road program, with its prioritization and its look at condition, allows it to become an administrative and an absolutely objective decision. And I believe this will also move that towards us. I think it helps our administration with not having individual one-offs coming up that are and then it stops people from lobbying council about why it's important. So I commend you for bringing forth this type of a management strategy around fleets. And again, we need it around our buildings and other assets as well. So I just wanted to say thank you. I think it's worked, it's done us well for roads, and see it being able to work really well with our fleet and other assets as well. So thank you, because it didn't happen overnight.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I will move the report for information. Comments, questions? All in favor? That is unanimous. And we're looking for someone to move us to our in-camera person. That's Councillor Smith. All in favor? All right, that is. Great, slow down. It is not great. Morning brain fog is coming back. Oh, stop that. I can't even stand that. Even my, like I said, my 18-year-old niece was, when I eat gluten, I get. I know what gluten is. On your phone, that was just your mom said you could. Thank you very much for joining us. Councillor Lewis moved us out of our in-camera session. That was the only motion made. But I'm looking for someone to make a motion to accept the intergovernmental update report for information. Councillor Scobie, thank you very much. Comments, questions, debate, all in favor? Unanimous. And we are adjourned at 11:27. We have completed our agenda in the mornings. There will be no afternoon session today. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day.